presenting their PAS 2020 clinic entitled 0 to 60, the Cavaliers, past, present, and future. Please welcome Michael McIntosh.
When we put our application in for PASIC, we had no idea what was in store for us and ultimately the entire world. As things changed, our initial ideas and methods went through several iterations until we felt comfortable the clinic would convey the intended musicianship and emotion. That being said, the Cavaliers are honored to have been chosen to be a part of the first ever virtual Percussive Arts Society International Convention. The next 60 minutes, you will experience 60 years of marching percussion performed by talented students from all over. These performers log countless hours to create a piece of art much bigger than all of us. You'll witness literature from each decade. You'll hear past and present Cavaliers composers tell their stories, and hopefully you'll get a feel for how their contributions continue to push the limits, what changed, and what stayed the same. We crafted this presentation with a lot of care. Care for our fellow percussionists, and care for all the participants and fans that are really pining for the marching arts right now. 0 to 60, the Cavaliers' past, present, future is about all of us. So relax, sit back, and as my daughters say, enjoy the show.
Hi, my name is Michael Lorenz, and I was asked, since I marched in the 1967 Cavalier snare line, to talk a little bit about the 64 drum solo. A bit of background. I joined the Cavaliers at the very tender age of 11. My first season when I was 12, 1964, I was an alternate. I sat out the 65 season. Larry McCormick, the drum instructor, called me, and I rejoined the Corps and marched the 1966 and the 1967 seasons on snare. The 1960s Cavalier drum lines, it was all about Larry McCormick. Larry was way ahead of his time. He was a trendsetter, and he constantly challenged us to do more and more difficult music. The 1966 and 67 winter, that's when we also did the Blacklight Quartet at the Chicago Civic Opera House. Possibly the most difficult rudimental solo I've ever played. I do remember when Larry brought the 64 solo to rehearsal. In those days, we were rehearsing at the old Cavalier Hall at Logan Square before it burned down. But he had already been preparing us with different patterns, different exercises for some of the things that were contained in the 64. Even as a 14-year-old, I had a hard time wrapping my head around some of the phrasing in the second half, the paradiddle tap stuff. Bear in mind, we were playing on 12 by 15 Rogers Dynasonic drums with Mylar heads. We worked our butts off, we got that sucker clean, and we played it clean all summer long. It's my understanding that the current Cavalier snare line is going to play the 64. Guys, have fun. I have all the confidence in the world you're going to do it justice. Splooey.
Performing the 64 by Larry McCormick from 1967, please welcome the Cavaliers.
First, I'd like to say a big thank you to all the Cavalier drumline alumni from the 70s that provided a lot of this research and information. The 70s overall had a lot of ups and downs for the Cavaliers as an organization and as a percussion section. We're going to focus on some of the highlights. 1970 specifically, Larry McCormick led the charge with innovation in the arranging and the instrumentation, which was the largest percussion section the Cavaliers had put on the field to date. The season started with as many as 8 snares and also included for the first time timpani, 4 different individuals fielding timpani. 1972 was the birth of DCI. That was an 8-man snare line. And then through the 70s, the 74 to 76, under the direction of Dan Spalding, we saw the explosion of colors and textures, with mallet percussion being allowed, chimes, world percussion, bongos, maracas, you name it. If it could be leveraged, the Cavaliers did so in the arrangements. 1978, for a very brief 1-year season, the snare line went matched grip. And then in 1979, the Cavaliers fielded 10 snares and adopted a lower, more precise height system with the approach to the drums and the drumming, which was rewarded, and also experienced the first major influx of out-of-state talent, not from the Chicago area, that we still enjoy to this day.
Hello everyone, my name is Dan Spalding. I'm coming to you from my home office in Trenton, New Jersey. Beautiful Trenton, New Jersey. I've lived here for many, many years. I'm currently the music director and conductor of the Philadelphia Virtuosi Chamber Orchestra. I've done that for 29 years, and for the past 8 years I've also been the music director of the New Jersey Capitol Philharmonic. I joined corps when I was 13 in 1965 as a tenor drummer with the Scarlet Lancers in Wichita, Kansas, and I spent 30 years very active in drum corps as an instructor, a judge, consultant, and it was a great experience. I was really honored to have the opportunity when I was very young to instruct and write for the Cavaliers in 1974 through 1976. So you need to remember about this solo in 1974 that made such a big impression. It was the first year that a marching xylophone and marching bells were allowed on the field. The marching timpani had been there for a few years, but this gave me the opportunity to do something completely different from any other drum line. What I did was just set, you will hear it, I just set up an ostinato, a pretty complicated ostinato for 4 players in the timpani, and then just overlaid a melody, had some improvisations, and went through all the sections so they could feature themselves. It was very brief, but it made a huge impression on the judges, and we always got great GE marks during 1974 and 75. For some reason, the judges just loved this solo. It's funny though, when we first learned it in 1974, the drummers didn't like it. But my trusty assistant, Jim Russell, he convinced them that it was a great solo, and they were convinced eventually. They wanted a razzmatazz, old-fashioned drum solo, but it worked out, and we were very successful.
Performing Green Soul by Dan Spalding from 1975. Please welcome the Cavaliers.
Hello everyone, Brett Kuhn here to talk to you about innovations and highlights from the 1980s. 1981 brought us Gus Barbaro, better known as Cosmo, introducing a new tenor configuration, 10, 10, 12, 13, 14. So everything led down the drums. Outside 4 drums were extended collar. The main 10 on top was a regular collar. In 1982, Dan Spalding was back, introducing 2 sets of timpani up front, as well as a high quad and a low trio tenor section in the field battery. 1984, Jim Campbell arrives as percussion arranger. We start to move into a more concert band, classically oriented genre of music, and really start to think about the Cavaliers as a school for percussion. In 86, we add Kevin Lepper to the mix with the front ensemble, and then really see a nice growth in terms of colors that are added, the rack mount systems that we see today where multiple instruments are on the keyboards, as well as concert bass gong, concert toms. You know, we're starting to really expand that front ensemble as we know it today. 86, 7, 8 brought us Brad Halls and Leif Marweed, 2 great outside influences that really helped us redefine some of our technical aspects, as well as in 88, the introduction of the flam head. With that introduction came kind of a reinvention of tuning scheme for the Cavaliers and approach. The amount of rebound and shock that you were getting off of a flam head was just so different than the Mylar. It was definitely a learning curve throughout the activity, but especially in terms of the flow and the way we would approach the instrument. That last 6 years, from 84 to 89, 90, the edge there, really was a very successful run of growth, producing a fuller and more complete percussion sections, and really helped propel us into the 1990s.
The 1982 solo was fashioned in somewhat the same manner, but I had 7 timpani on the sideline to set up the ostinato, and that was inspired by Spyro Gyra, a rock group from the time. The solo in 1974 was completely original. But in 82, I kind of took a theme from Spyro Gyro, and it's the same kind of thing. Set up the ostinato, have a melody, fairly simple, go through some good rudimental passages, and have a climax. So I hope you enjoy it. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here at PASIC this year.
Performing Spyro Gyro by Dan Spalding from 1982, please welcome the Cavaliers.
This is James Campbell. Currently, I am Professor of Music and Director of Percussion Studies at the University of Kentucky in Lexington. I was involved with the Cavaliers from 1983 through 1996 in multiple roles, including program coordinator, percussion arranger and caption head, as well as consultant during the later part of my tenure. My fellow designers, Tim Salzman and Steve Brubaker, asked me to get involved after the 1983 season. Our design team introduced contemporary wind band and orchestral literature to the Cavaliers' repertoire. The percussion design team also incorporated concert percussion influences and world music elements into the marching percussion design. My personal highlights include winning the 1992 DCI World Championships and in 1995, as well as the High Percussion Awards in 1991, 92, and 95. I especially cherish working with all the talented corps members whom I crossed paths with. Many who are today's most successful school music teachers, university professors, noted performers, and music industry professionals. I hope you enjoy the clinic. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Patrick McGowan, and I am the Senior Director of Forensics and Compliance at a global leader in aerospace and defense. However, from 1987 to 1991, I played quads at Cavaliers. And I wanted to be a part of Cavaliers really because of the 1985 show, The Planets. It was clear to me at that time that Cavaliers were making a little bit of a move. The show was more sophisticated. You could really see that there was some forward momentum, and they were kind of finding something about how they could innovate within that, that stylistic tradition. And so when I got to the Corps, I'd say that was one of the most prominent things about the organization is, just how much a part of the experience that the culture and tradition was every day in what you did. And what that meant to me and to, I guess to us at the time was trying to push the boundaries a little bit on the field and off the field. And when I think of that, there's really no day that summarizes that better than a day in Allentown, Pennsylvania in 1988. And it started out like a normal day, practice. But we noticed while we were practicing, me and my little buddies in the quad line, that there was an especially appealing press box on the stadium with no safety rail and at a nice altitude. And so naturally we figured we'd better climb up there with our drums at lunch and play up there. So we did. And that drew the ire of the corps director. I mean, just radioactive fury. So that was, the first half of our day was something like that. But then that night we were meeting Blue Devils for the first time at a late season regional show, and Devils were awesome that year. I think undefeated at that point, and this is the last of the Tom Float drum lines. And so these were some of the lines that were ahead of us at the time, and we're trying to catch up to. And we popped a show that night, and we won drums, and it felt great because it really felt like an arrival point that we were doing it kind of our way, the Cavaliers way, but we could be competitive with, these top lines out there like that. And, I felt fortunate to be part of the organization through that evolution because we did continue forward momentum in that time. And then to see it after I aged out, that the guys built on that so many times over, and yet you always kind of felt a part of it, when you would see it, and so that tradition was the common thread throughout that, and that same kind of attitude, chip on the shoulder, trying to just push the boundaries, seemed to always be a part of the experience, and I felt very fortunate to be a part of that, the Cavaliers at that time, and to see the organization, continue to grow like that was very rewarding. So I hope you enjoyed that small slice of Cavaliers lore. Enjoy the clinic. Thank you very much.
Performing Bunko Rules by Pat Bunko McGowan. Please welcome the Cavaliers.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Mason, and I'm the Associate Dean of the School of Creative Arts and Professor of Percussion at Morehead State University in Morehead, Kentucky. I was a member of the Corps in 1987 and 88, and a member of the staff 1989 through 96, primarily working with the front ensemble. 1993, I did a little bit of writing and took over as percussion designer and caption head in 94 through 96. 95 was a special year with regard to it being our second championship and our third drum title, but it was also the 10-year anniversary of the 85 Planets show. We did some really cool things with regard to tone color and sound that year. We had a 14-inch drum in the snare line for the opener with a detuned Kevlar head. We used 13s the rest of the show, but we had a lighter stick in the percussion feature in Mercury. It was a 2B sized Guiro stick that Alamert designed for us from Silver Fox. We had a special tenor mallet that we also used on the bass drums in the closer, but that tenor mallet was a small disc, looked like a timpani mallet. It had timpani felt around it, and we played some French grip stuff in the opener. But we had a few ionization quotes in the front ensemble that year, but we continued our multi-pit tradition that we had started developing in 1990, and it's great to see that that still lives to this day in the activity. But yeah, it was a phenomenal year full of great stories. Don Warren gave me a hard time for having to redesign the truck a little bit to house the extra set of snare drums since we had just gotten a new truck in 94. But there were lots of great stories from that year, and I'm honored to have been a part of the legacy and the tradition of the incredible organization of the Cavaliers. I can't thank Mike McIntosh enough for inviting me to do this, and I really hope you enjoy the clinic.
Performing Venus by Brian Mason from 1995. Please welcome the Cavaliers.
Hello everyone and welcome. This is Brett Kuhn. I'm here to give you a quick talk down on the next excerpt we'll be playing for you, which is the Fight Club section of the 2002 Framework show. First of all, I want to thank Eric Johnson and Richard Saucedo, who collaborated on this musical moment for the show. This particular moment was really based or had emphasis in rhythm, starting with very simple quarter notes. If you listen to the entire movement sometime on YouTube or on your DVDs or whatever you have access to, you hear that quarter note in the clave, and then there's two fundamental rhythms we kind of thread throughout that the audience really could hold on to or attach to. One of those is the rhythm and melody from Green Acres, which is an old school show that many at that time still knew, or if they were younger members of the audience, would hear about and then go find it on late night TV. And then A Shave and a Haircut, 2 Bits was the other rhythm. So those two rhythms that you hear a lot are the threads that go throughout. When we created this movement, we wanted to use some unique textures and timbres on the field, or try some new things. One was the actual counting of rhythm as the Fight Club is building and you hear the groove and texture underneath. Because at that point in the movement, we'd already pretty much displayed the technical aspects we wanted to display. We'd already played in a lot of odd time and really emphasized different rhythmic changes, fivelets to sixteenths to triplets, etc. And I think it was the culmination of that movement, this particular section. And it was really about the movie, what Michael Gaines and Andy Toth did right here to develop this amazing synergy with the drum corps that was so memorable for everyone. One of our other goals was the fact that we used Green Acres and a Shave and a Haircut 2 Bits was by the end of the year, I just wanted the audience to clap those rhythms with us. I wanted them to be in the show, to feel like they were a part of the show. There's no greater feeling when you guys get to interact with the performers, and I think that's one of the things that really sold it. And I think when you watch the video from back then and you see the audience stand up at the end and just, it's this amazing applause, I think it was really for them and for us, which was such a cool moment. So the synergy was awesome. Obviously, this could not have happened without the incredible staff and the incredible members of that drum corps. So thank you to you all. This is really about you guys. So without further ado, the 2020 Cavaliers Drumline and Fight Club.
Performing Fight Club by Brett Kuhn, Michael McIntosh, and Eric Johnson from 2002, please welcome the Cavaliers.
Hey everybody, my name is Russell Warden, and I'm one of the battery coordinators here at the Cavaliers. I marched on the bass drum line from 2008 to 2012, so as you can imagine, the 2000s is a decade that I'm pretty passionate about. Now, one of the major changes that happened around this time was the legalization of amplification. It took place in 2004, and it completely changed the game. One of the big changes for us percussionists is that now you could legally amplify your keyboard instruments, which meant that the keyboard players could play with a much more concert-style touch and approach. It also meant that you could amplify instruments that you wouldn't otherwise be able to hear acoustically, such as waterphone or hammer dulcimer. It really opened up the possibilities for composition. Another big change around this time is the addition of choreography to the battery. Now, before 2007 or 2008, batteries pretty much exclusively either stood still or marched for their whole show. And nowadays you go see a drumline competition and there's incredibly detailed choreography happening while they're drumming. It really just became a new way for the performers and the show designers to express their ideas. The last change I want to mention is something a little bit more subtle. But if you watch a show from 2000 and then watch a show from 2009, you'll notice a change in the percussion vocabulary. Around this time, percussion arrangers started playing with more rhythmic and flow and space-oriented ideas and kind of got away a little bit from what you might consider traditional rudimental vocabulary. In a way, it kind of mirrors the shift in the brass world from using G bugles to B flat and F band instruments. And in a way, it actually starts to blur the line a little bit between the marching ensemble and the concert ensemble. It's something that people still love to argue about today, but either way, the 2000s was a decade of radical change in the marching arts.
Hi, this is Jim Casella from Portland, Oregon. I was a music arranger for the Cavaliers for 4 years, starting in the 2006 season. When I was hired by the Cavaliers, I had recently finished a long tenure with the Santa Clara Vanguard. And I remember Scott Coder specifically asking me to bring some of the SCV approach This was both a fun endeavor and a challenging experiment because those two programs weren't necessarily coming at things from the same stylistic standpoint back then. But the way I saw it, and the way I still see it, is that music is the thing that will dictate the technical approach, not the other way around. Just because we're in the marching realm, there's a battery, there's a front ensemble, we're wearing uniforms, we're running around a field, we're being adjudicated. It's still just one big percussion ensemble making music together. Real music that should make you feel something deep at your core. In 2008, our show was titled Samurai, and this is a time in history where the indoor percussion scene had really taken strong hold, and I think in a lot of ways was starting to influence how drum corps programs were programming their shows. So there was a lot more body motion, and just in general, the musical and visual captions were becoming much more integrated. This was also the first year where the front ensemble wore costumes rather than the traditional Cavaliers uniform. So I like to think of this time in history as kind of the dawn of the more theatrical, highly produced shows that we've become more accustomed to today. So a show called Samurai really gave us a very clear character to go after, and it drove a lot of our musical direction in terms of rhythmic themes and scales and colors. We had these shell attachments on the snares and tenors. It was kind of meant to mimic the sound of a stick on the rim of a taiko drum. You'll hear that a lot in this excerpt from the third movement. I feel hugely honored to be just a small little part of the tradition of excellence in the Cavaliers percussion program. And I want to thank Mike McIntosh and especially the Cavaliers 2020 percussion section for performing this excerpt for you. I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, my name is Eric Johnson, and I have over 20 years of experience with the Cavalier organization as a marching member, instructor, arranger-composer, and as a consultant. I was an instructor from 1995 through 1997, front ensemble arranger from 1998 through 2005, and 2008 through 2010. I also served as a consultant for many years as well. It's an honor for me to be involved in this clinic, 0 to 60, the past, the present, the future. One of the selections featured today is the third movement from the Cavaliers' 2008 production of Samurai. One of the important elements of this show was the use of traditional Japanese percussion instruments. I was first introduced to traditional Japanese percussion instruments as the front ensemble arranger for the Amachi band from Nagoya, Japan. After further research, Jim Casella and I implemented an extensive list of traditional Japanese percussion instruments. 2008 was the final summer before electronic sound design was introduced. Therefore, we had to produce all the traditional Japanese percussion sounds acoustically. Some of the traditional Japanese instruments used in this production were shimidaikos, chudaikos, shakuhachi flute, which was reproduced with a slide whistle, a shamisen, which was reproduced with a Chinese yangshin dulcimer, yoshigi claves, tarigani, chapas, bell tree, Tibetan bowls, finger cymbals, wind chimes played with glockenspiel mallets, bamboo wind chimes, and a glockenspiel played with finger cymbals. For the Samurai production, I had the privilege of writing alongside Richard Saucedo and Jim Casella. So without further ado, please enjoy the third movement from the Cavaliers' 2008 production of Samurai. Thank you.
Performing Samurai by Jim Casella and Eric Johnson from 2008. Please welcome the Cavaliers.
As we arrive in 2010, we see the integration of another new percussive voice, electronics. Beginning with the Cavaliers program Mad World, the front ensemble adds a synth performer, and electronics begin to provide both amplification and also a new musical layer, allowing Mike McIntosh and team to compose with an infinite color palette. That electronic integration, combined with a unique and cohesive percussion package, allowed the ensemble to bring home the Corps' 6th High Percussion Award in 2011. In 2012, the Corps pushed further, integrating composed electronic music with multiple full ensemble moments driven almost entirely by electronics. And 2013 marked my third and final year with the group. Now, I remember as a young performer being inspired by the incredible programs and incredible percussion sections of the 2000s, like Frameworks and Samurai, and I will never forget the first time I saw the Cavaliers. The green, the hat, they were tall, they were strong, they were talented, and they were untouchable. In 2013, they told us we were changing the look for our show Secret Society, covering up the greens with cloaks and hoods, and only wearing the hats for a portion of the program. We had questions. Why were we changing the look that we all fell in love with? But little did we know that we were on the cusp of the next evolution of the decade. From 2013 on, the Cavaliers would add full ensemble costuming to the design and begin to explore a whole new type of show, integrating elements of movement and intimate connection to audiences inspired by WGI, along with advanced set designs and storytelling tools from the theater world. The design team would continue to push the ensemble's limits while honoring elements of the Corps' history, like bringing keyboard instruments back onto the field, moving marimbas in 2014, and a marching xylophone section in 2018. They would also recreate and reinvent the Mars theme from the planets by combining with Frank Sinatra in 2017. And we'd come full circle, presenting the strength, the power, and the camaraderie that have shaped the Cavaliers since the beginning in our 2019 production, The Wrong Side of the Tracks.
Composing for pageantry, for me, is always still music forward. The construct of form, melody, rhythmic counterpoint, groove, expression, ostinato, idiomatic interpretation, virtuosity, all being watermarks on the percussion contribution. The concept of inherent demand does come into play as well, which makes the process obviously a ton of fun. You've got 8 months to distill the product, and you're dealing with mostly college-age talent, which is empowering. Finding that balance as we share the stage with the brass and color guard is part of each year's puzzle. Within that mindfulness, though, we are still trying to push boundaries and create that wow factor. This mindset, as you've heard today, has been a part of the Cavaliers' percussion for much, much longer than I've been a part of it. The music from the future you are about to hear was written with all of this in mind.
Collaborating with Mike McIntosh and the design team at the Cavaliers is truly inspiring, exciting, honestly surreal. It's such a blast. Mike pushes me musically, as does the incredible membership that we enjoy at the Cavaliers. Coupled with the insane level of education shared by our teaching staff, I truly get to enjoy and utilize all the crayons in the box with no limits. The musicality, the creativity, the physical power that our members bring to the production, and then just the collaboration with Mike is just, it's a blast. It's a lot of fun. The excerpt we inherited from the brass has a lot of major chord qualities. We expanded that with related modes and additional chord tones to try to give a little bit of a unique twist to those major tonalities. A lot of interplay with the battery vocabulary from Mike, and kind of unique to this production, utilizing timpani as a melodic voice. We hope you enjoy it.
Performing music from the future by Michael McIntosh and Cliff Walker from 2021. Please welcome the Cavaliers.
Hello, my name is Dave Leatherman from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I'm a proud alumni of the Cavaliers Drum and Bugle Corps. I marched in the bass drum line from 95 to 1997. I started drum corps at the age of 13 and was hooked on bass drum. Marching in a small Division II and III corps from the Midwest, one of my greatest memories was always knowing that one of the big corps would be at the show we performed at. In many cases, that meant the Cavaliers would be there. I remember being told, "You can't play off the field," before my time with the Cavaliers. You get a penalty, and no corps could afford that. But there they were, the Cavalier bass drum line. They were playing the corps off the field, and people loved it. It was tradition. For those men in green, there was no penalty. I had to become part of that somehow, some way. As it turns out, that bass drum cadence the Cavaliers play is called Iowa, and it began after a show in the state of Iowa. One person starts playing, and the groove has added layers based on a specific counting structure. Though the pattern is very simple, accented triplets, when segmented at different counts, it builds a really cool polyrhythmic groove. For example, I was on bass 3. I was to come in on count 20, which actually was a right foot lead. I'll be honest, I counted to 20 every time on bass 3. If I messed that up, it'd throw the entire cadence off, and we couldn't have that. I remember several shows in 97 when I was bass drum section leader actually yelling, "Come on, you're phasing," at the crowd. You could always hear the crowd start in time with Iowa, but eventually it morphed into this really funny phasing where you couldn't tell where count 1 was from the crowd clapping. Look, kids split more notes in their warm-ups than I did during an entire show when I marched. Who knows if I'd make it in the Cavaliers if I were auditioning today. Fortunately, I don't have to worry about that. I did it. I accomplished my goal and played that sweet cadence called Iowa off the field every night to fans who loved it. And I'm grateful. A true Iowa kid actually playing Iowa in the Cavaliers bass drum line. What are the odds? No matter how much the activity evolves and shows change from year to year, the notes from Iowa will remain the same, forever etched in Cavalier corps and bass drum history. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Performing their famous cadence, Iowa. Please welcome the 2021 baseline from the Cavaliers.
Hi, I'm Glenn Kochi. I marched with the Cavaliers in 1989 in the summer between high school and college. That summer in the snare line proved to be invaluable to me. Starting with the camps over the winter, I never would have had the discipline to practice that hard at that age if it weren't for the goal of making that snare line. My chops and technique improved drastically during that period. And then when I began to actually perform with the corps, the mix of mental and physical skills that were instilled in me were so formative that I still draw upon them all the time in my professional life. With the Cavaliers, I learned to self-analyze and gained an awareness of my playing that I never would have otherwise. Maybe the most valuable training I received, though, was learning the hypersensitive listening skills as well as how to make split-second adjustments in my playing. When I'm performing with Wilco in a variety of settings, I'm part of an ensemble. And sometimes I need to seamlessly adjust the feel or groove of a song without interrupting or interfering with the performance or the song. Those are skills I learned while in the Cavaliers. Of course, dealing with the pressure of live performance and 127 other people relying on me also made its mark. I'm pretty comfortable now in front of large audiences or cameras, and that's because of my time in the Cavies as well. These crucial skills were all jam-packed into an intensive learning environment that was a summer with the Cavaliers. I do think that my experience was especially unique because of the instructors and staff at that time. These were master teachers that I was exposed to, people like Jim Campbell, Brett Kuhn, Kevin Lepper, Leif Marwi, Dave Dombeck. The list goes on, not to mention all the other veterans that I marched with. I learned so much from all of them. And even though I didn't like being pushed so hard at the time, I'm extremely grateful that I was. I want to thank Michael McIntosh for continuing that tradition and legacy. Enjoy the rest of the clinic.
This is Mitch Markovich, and that was part of Stamina, the solo I used to win my first of 3 consecutive U.S. snare drum championships. And this is national champion and 6-year Cavalier instructor Frank Arsenault, who led my first 2 rehearsals in 1961. When I joined the Cavaliers, I played fairly low. The Cavalier line played much higher, so we compromised. We became known as the Fabulous 3Ms, Ron Markwinski, Ben Michael, and Mitch Markovich, and we had an undefeated drumline season. In January, after Frank Arsenault left, we had no instructor, so I, at 15 years old, and tenor Tom Radke became marching instructors. Ron and Ben were 19 or 20. After the National Individual Snare Drum Competition, Ron and Ben said, "We didn't know you could play that high." So we went back to the authentic Arsenault height. This increased exposure to error, but we were confident we could do it. We continued undefeated as a drumline and corps and had a whole lot more fun. I chose Stamina at the beginning of this video to demonstrate our increased dynamic range. Find me on Facebook to see the unedited 61 Cavalier drumline history, the evolution of the 2020 Markovich Gold Standard style, my critical 52 grip and form checkpoints, my new university, professor, and PhD master classes, and the Markovich and Rampad secrets to take your drumming to the next level. Thank you, Cavaliers, for having such an amazing impact on my life. Now, you enjoy our 61 Power Solo by Dick Brown.
Performing drum solo number 2 by Dick Brown, please welcome 60 Years of the Cavaliers.
There were some unique challenges in putting this project together. We formed audio and video teams to handle the workloads of mixing, editing, and stitching over 500 videos and audio files. Everything was kept organized with weekly sub-goals set to break the clinic down into smaller, more manageable parts. Communication was key in a project this large, and the core staff and member leadership had weekly Zoom meetings to keep everything on track and transparent. Using multiple Google Drives, Google Docs, spreadsheets, Dropbox, Sibelius, Premiere Pro, Ableton, Pro Tools, and Logic, we were able to teach and sift through all of the video and audio content and distill it down into our 60-minute presentation. Educationally, the evolution of the music from decade to decade was a fascinating experience for all of us. Different excerpts required different muscle groupings based on content and tempos, and it was great to combine the material with a history lesson and story unique to each piece. We really tried to go behind the music, and each chart became much more than notes on a page. We started in February by using the excerpts from past Cavaliers as playing assignments to assess member technique, musicianship, and time management. We would assign these excerpts in a closed Facebook group, which allowed all membership to see each other's handiwork and encouraged peer-to-peer dialogue. Asking the performers to capture their craft on video constantly tweaked their performance skill set. We also used cutting-edge technologies like SoundSlice and MusicChunks.com to give the membership educational tools that allowed them to upload a converted Sibelius file of the music and change tempo at will, empowering their individual learning processes. Embracing all forms of technology available to us created a virtual, educational experience that enabled our performance at PASIC for you today. Nearly everything you saw and heard today was performed and edited by current or former Cavaliers. Creating this virtual event with a level of professionalism PAS is known for was a labor of love. A huge thank you to Joshua Simons, Julie Davila, Sean Womack, and PAS for their support. Thank you to Nick Mason, Jeff Hartowicz, Ruben Rodriguez, Matt Owen, and Jack Holway for working tirelessly to bring this project to life. Thank you to Kyle Miller for his superior organizational skills, and Monty Mast, Michael Vaughn, and Teen Fam for their awesome administrative support. Bruce Peters was always available and a force in getting gear in our guys' hands. A huge shout out and thank you to my fellow presenters for their keen insights, and to the entire Cavalier staff for continuing to teach and inspire all year. We also want to thank the companies that support the Cavaliers: the Yamaha Corporation, Innovative Percussion, the Remo Corporation, Zildjian Corporation, Pageantry Innovations, Daddario Accessories, Treeworks, and On2 Percussion. I want to give a big Mac Daddy hug to our incredible 2020 drumline and front ensemble for their amazing musicianship and work ethic. I really love these guys. Finally, a big thank you to all of the Cavalier alumni that supported and contributed to this monumental effort. Please know your contributions are in ink, and they are forever. By now, you can probably tell that 0 to 60 became something bigger than all of us. It felt great working intimately with others towards a common goal again, and this project blossomed into a love letter to everyone and anyone that values the marching arts. So please, continue to support music in the arts in any and every form. It is such a huge part of the tapestry of our lives and the lives of those around us. Music matters. It really does. Thank you. Boom! Ah, fudge. That was the one, Jelly Bean.
Someday I'll wish upon a star, wake up when the clouds are far behind me. Where troubles nothing but it drops away, and other chimney tops wearing out behind me. Somewhere over the rainbow.
This is Cavaliers 74, take 34.
Totally forgot what I was going to say.
Beyond the rainbow, Cavaliers, as we march on through the years, we march along and sing the song, for we are the Cavaliers. We are the Cavaliers, there is no more we fear. We march along and sing the song, for we know that we never will march on through the Cavaliers, as we march on through the years. We march